Hey there folks, this is Pop Culture, I'm Alex Pop, and this third edition of Sunday School Saturdays is actually not going to be on the one that I hinted at the end of the last one. There's another show that I wanted to get to first, so I guess think of this as like the Moonraker of Sunday School Saturdays. So, guess who's turning 27 today? TV actress Jessica Amley, R&B singer Kali Uchis, and soccer stars Benjamin Mendy and Victor Lindelof. And of course, the reason I brought up the question at all, yours truly. So, how am I celebrating? By looking back on this little show from the time when society was at its peak, straight out of the good old days when denim overalls were the height of fashion. I'm talking a show that is total 90s cornball for kids. And I kinda got a soft spot for it. Guideposts Junction is a 6-part video series created in 1995 by music producers Frank and Betsy Hernandez, as well as Dan Johnson, one of the producers of McGee and Me. Chances are excellent you probably never heard of the show unless your mom was a regular shopper at family Christian stores. Rest in peace. You want to know just how obscure it is? There's no IMDb page for it. Heck, when you Google Guideposts Junction, you find more about the album than you do the actual show. There is not one solitary soul online who has talked about it before me. You will be hard-pressed to find anyone else. So how much of an honor is it to be the first? Well, let's get into it. Each video begins with a few random kids sending out letters, and once they arrive in the Guidepost Junction mailbox, they're suddenly transported into this giant pixelated vacuum where they're taken down into the building. Don't worry, the rest of the show is not as bright and hazy as the theme sequence is for whatever reason. I guess maybe they just want to draw in those boys and girls who are So the star of the show is Jodi Benson as herself, a fairly recognizable name, which is why I find the obscurity of this series to be quite perplexing. Jodi is the assistant to this Stan Winston kindergarten project. This is Wally, who I suppose you could say is like the CEO of Guidepost Junction. He's kind of like Barney, if Barney was a turtle and he had the vocabulary of Eugene Meltzner.
Did we extrapolate any previously unknown insights from it?
He means, did we learn anything?
But I thought I said that.
He's credited under the full name Wally T. Turtle. Yep, he's such a dignified chap that they actually gave him the middle initial T. Probably just stands for the. And we have the Post Kids, a small group of 8 to 10-year-olds who, I guess, have gotten a job there sorting out the mail. I'm not sure exactly how they came to be here. Among the Post Kids, there's Alexi Igdepa, who at the time was doing another children's show, the Hug-a-Bug Club, and she grew up to be a career dancer. As did little redhead Josh Hutcherson here, Spencer Liff. He would go on to be a backup dancer in movies like Hairspray and the Footloose remake, and he's a 2-time Emmy-nominated choreographer for So You Think You Can Dance, which Alexi was a finalist on during Season 7. The one I'd say you're most likely to have heard of before is Gary Leroy Gray. Around this time, he played a young Tiger Woods in a TV movie about the man, was Bobby the Inquisitive Boy on The Weird Al Show, and lent his voice to animated shows like Jimmy Neutron and Clifford the Big Red Dog. And he's turned up in small roles in a number of videos and TV series since. Then there's Shira Roth, who before Guidepost Junction was in several episodes of kids' songs, and afterwards she did a few things like being the voice of a Hebrew child in The Prince of Egypt, but after 2000 she just disappeared from the map, never to be seen on screen again. I take it maybe she never learned to keep her eyes off the camera. Yeah, you'll notice she's got a problem with that during some of the musical scenes. The one whom the least is known about, however, is Megan McCabe. There are a few IMDb pages under that name, but none have enough credits or photographs to identify which is her. So where she's been other than Guidepost Junction, I have no clue. So each of the 6 videos are made up of 3 segments, in each of which Jodi, the kids, and spikeless bug-eyed Bowser read one of the letters they got from children in the US asking for help with a dilemma or hardship they're facing. Jodi will tell the kids a true story about someone who went through a similar challenge, and in 2 of the 3 segments they'll sing a song to go with it. Yes, this lyric of the theme song is a lie.
Wally and the Post Kids may even sing a song or 2.
How can it be a song or 2 when it's always 2 per tape? So while Wally has the job of writing a letter back with his advice, Jodi and the kids will think of a summary for each of the lessons they learned, which they'll write out on a guidepost and hang on their sign at the end of the day. Though if they're all lessons that are meant to direct you God's way, you might not want to have them pointing in different directions. Guideposts Junction is a place of kooky interior design, with clock gears, giant crayons, and piano stairs. And when you step into the realm of this building, any little move you make might produce a cartoon sound effect.
A home run! Wow!
And not only that, but you can just mention an animal or some technical function or defect and you'll hear the corresponding sound.
I'm a burden on society. That's a burden on society.
And just as they're on their way to a small rural village to give their last performance of the day,
The bus breaks down. Again.
What, is Michael Winslow chilling in there somewhere? Now, little is known about the making of the show, but there are a few things that I can put together based on the credits, as well as these little booklets that came with the videotapes. Yeah, I own all 6. Apparently, unlike in VeggieTales, the letters that Jodi and Wally read are actual letters from children across the USA. And the true stories that Jodi tells the kids were all told in articles in the Guideposts for Kids magazines edited by Mary Lou Carney, who is the creative consultant for the show. And some of these stories are the life testimonies of famous Christian people like Mike Hall, Brett Butler, and Madeline L'Engle. Though I feel like this may have limited their options for how to demonstrate their message, the choice of story from the Guideposts for Kids magazine doesn't always work the greatest with what they're talking about. Take, for instance, in this segment called The Cave, which starts with Wally getting worked up about his computer malfunctioning.
I've got all these letters to write and mail, and they'll never get done, and all the kids will say, boy, that Wally is as slow as...
turtle?
No, actually, I was going to say molasses.
So Jodi determines that this is a job for one of the post kids.
Well,
I can fix it, but it might take me a while.
Isn't she kinda young to be a tech genius?
No.
Fair enough. So while Alexi works on the computer, Jodi reads a letter from a girl named Tamsin.
Dear Wally, my life is really mixed up right now. I keep praying, but nothing happens. Please help me. Tamsin.
Not to dismiss the problem at hand since these were real kids going through tough challenges, but I'd have a hard time helping the matter with a letter that vague. Still, Jodi tells a story of something that happened back in 1965, when a schoolboy named Morris Bateshold was exploring the caverns of Ohio with some friends, and he got stuck horizontally and headfirst in a very thin section of the cave. He was trapped in there for nearly a full day as firemen went through all possibilities for how to rescue him. Finally, a father and his 2 sons pulled over and volunteered to help. The oldest son, Mike, was thin enough and strong enough to get all the way down to Morris and get a rope around him, allowing everyone to successfully pull him out at last. Now, I do like the song, Just a Prayer Away, which follows the story.
Don't give up, however long it's taken. The miracle you need may be just a prayer away.
Though I'm not sure exactly what they're doing during the song has to do with anything, Jodi has the kids tightrope walk across a tape measure on the floor. Don't look down, whatever you do. And the other thing is that despite the message of the segment being about never giving up on prayer, Jodi never talks about the role that prayer played in the story, except for briefly mentioning it at the end. Even Shira sounds confused when she brings this up.
Morris was rescued because of 3 things: faith and patience and prayer.
Because everybody kept on praying?
abso-turtle-lutely.
You know, when you stick the word turtle into the word absolutely, it doesn't come out sounding like you added turtle. Because of the L that's already in there, it just sounds like you added turd. So anyway, now in most segments of the show, the story is presented to us in a reenactment. However, The Cave is one of 3 occasions where it's told in a comic strip. I wondered to myself what determines if they use this method instead, and the best I can figure is that it was for when the story involved something that they couldn't film or just didn't want to film. The first time, it's with a story about a boy who learns a lesson about profanity, and I guess they didn't want to film a little kid swearing, although there are certainly other ways around that. The second time is with a story about God shielding a mother, her son, and their exposed appliances from the pouring rain, and they just didn't have the budget to generate that illusion. I'll be talking more about this particular story later in the video. And in this case, I presume it's because they didn't know how to simulate a kid getting trapped in a narrow cave. I'm not sure what was standing in their way of faking it though, considering how badly they fake it at the end of the segment. Because after they decide on their guidepost, they obviously fake Alexi getting stuck underneath the desk as she finishes repairing Wally's computer.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, come on, that wasn't even a pop, that was a bounce sound effect. If you're gonna throw in so many cartoon sounds, at least know your cartoon sounds. Now, one thing you'll notice quickly about this show is that which letter Jodi and Wally choose to read and reply to always depends on what the Post kids are up to or what they're discussing. The boys laugh when the girls challenge them to a softball game.
I know it was in here. I just saw it a second. Oh, great.
Megan doesn't feel like sharing her brownies.
Sounds to me like it's time for another letter.
Spencer gloats over being the undefeated tic-tac-toe champion.
Hey, Leroy, do me a favor. Race on over to the old turtle's backs there and extract the highly pertinent and extremely relevant correspondence that came in a few minutes ago.
You know, come to think of it, that's probably the reason why they never responded to the letter I wrote to them. True story. I sent out a letter to Guideposts Junction complaining about how annoying my brother was and what I should do about it. They never responded, so I can only assess from that all the Post kids are an only child. That or I was just 6 years too late. Character-wise, the one who carries the show is Jodi Benson. She is quite likable, playing the quirky Sunday school teacher type. And the Post kids, they're cute, though their acting is usually passable at best. You can tell at times they could have used more focused direction, like an instance where they come in for a group cheer and Megan can hardly decide which hand to use. And Wally, aside from being the one who writes back to the kids who send the letters, the rest of his shtick is mostly just making a bazillion reptile and amphibian jokes.
To be able to write like this makes me the great reptilian.
Bill Snakespeare?
That's what they're going with.
Hey, Wally, are you sure Bill Snakespeare didn't write that?
Well, actually, I think it was his cousin, Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, you could just imagine the names they called him.
Yeah, like Turtlehead. Well, that's what they called me. But it still hurt.
Why? What offense is there to be taken to someone calling you by the actual head that you possess? Give the guy in the suit credit, it doesn't look very easy jumping and flipping around in that thing. By the way, you want to know who the guy in the suit is? It's Mark Casso, who, I kid you not, was Leonardo in TMNT 2 and 3. Man, what do you have to do to earn that kind of typecasting? You might be thinking, there's no way this show could avoid making some kind of joke related to that, and you'd be right.
Can I help it if they wouldn't let me into dancing school because I'm a turtle?
You should have tried to get into martial arts school. I hear they let turtles do that.
Well, if you wanted to be precise, you'd mention that they only accept the ones that are a chintzy costume. But something tells me this show wouldn't be quite that meta. Actually, to be fair, there are a few references like that are just easy enough that kids can catch on to them. Or at least I did when I was a kid.
Oh, so it's true what they say. A turtle's work is never done.
That's funny. I used to hear the same thing about mermaids. But I guess you wouldn't know about that.
Now, I learned very recently from my mom that I actually met Jodi Benson once, albeit when I was like 1 year old. Man, I have a vague memory of the moment I was born, and yet I have no recollection of meeting God's creation of the 8th day. It was when Jodi visited a family Christian store at Totem Lake Mall, I think doing a promotion for Guideposts Junction. My sister, 6 years old at the time, was recovering from leukemia, and she got an autographed copy of the All for One tape. And I can tell the reason she was given that particular tape is because it contained this segment, Heads of the Class, in which the kids find a letter sent in from a boy who had chemotherapy to treat his leukemia. They're puzzled by the included photograph of the boy, as he has no hair.
My, what a handsome young man. Personally, I think bald is beautiful.
But he's not a turtle. He's a boy. Yeah, and boys aren't supposed to be bald.
Hey, Lexi's got more common sense than the animators of That Which We Do Not Speak Of.
We're all different. Megan has brown hair, Shira has blonde. Jodi has lots of hair where I don't have any. But it doesn't mean any of us is funny looking.
Well, yeah, in your case, it's not that you're hairless, it's that your cheeks are so big you probably can't get inside your shell. They read another letter from a girl who has a friend at school who's constantly picked on for being nerdy, and she asks for help on how to deal with the situation.
I think I know a story that could help conceptualize, visualize, and otherwise further emphasize this particular problem.
Oh, that's our Wally. A dictionary with legs.
And let me guess, he's got some relative who's a thesaurus. He goes on to tell about a boy named Seth, a popular kid at school with plenty of friends. But when he was diagnosed with leukemia, he lost all his hair due to the chemotherapy treatments, and during remission he's afraid of going back to school looking like that. But when reuniting with his friends on his first day back, he's greeted by the last thing he was expecting.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Well, except for this. Yeah, I know we had another one. What fun? This is fun.
I'm fairly certain the way that line was meant to be read was, "This kind of fun?" You know, so that it's actually a question. There is kind of an odd moment of artistry in the camera work here. As Seth's spirits are lifted, realizing what his friends did for him, the shot fades to a faster frame rate and brighter picture.
Whoa, why did I do that? Hey, bring over the friends all by himself. That's right. You go.
And thus the Bald Forever Fellowship was formed. You have my electric razor.
But they were his friends.
And friends don't care about hair or skin color or anything. Why, they don't even care if you can sing or not.
But lucky for us, you can.
Lucky for us, because otherwise we'd be so obscure that we couldn't have so much as a video riffing on us by some jerk with a booming voice 26 years from now.
All for one for all.
So Jodi and the kids sing a song about how great it is having loyal friends, sure can't stop watching the camera, and afterwards they come up with their guidepost.
Rejoice with those who rejoice.
And be bold with those who are bold.
Probably a good thing that at the time my sister had chemotherapy, I was just outside of the age range that would have taken that statement seriously. You know, I'd say that there are only 2 of the story reenactments that are at all decently acted. One is where a lonely boy visits a retirement home and makes friends with the residents there. This scene's acted okay because I'm guessing they probably just filmed at a retirement home and the residents played themselves. The other actually has a legendary actor in it. It's a story about an old farmer and his grandson. While on the verge of an important harvest, the old man finds his grandson being lazy while on the job in the cornfield, so he teaches him a lesson by spanking the garden hoe.
There. I think it's gonna do much better now.
Yes, sir.
If you don't recognize the actor, it's the late Buck Kartalian, most famous for playing Julius in the original Planet of the Apes.
You know what they say, human see, human do.
Even without that name, this story obviously should have gotten more coverage than just a children's home video. I could totally see it as a headline. Crazy old Coop punishes his garden tools. You know that'd be a draw. Now there's one segment of the show that really showcases just how bad the acting can get in the reenactments, as well as just how weird the acting can get from the Post Kids, or at least just from Leroy. It's called The Good Guys, where the kids find a $10 bill lying around and presume that someone mailed it in by accident.
What should I do with it? Keep it. Spend it. No, we can't do that. It wouldn't be right.
Unable to come to an agreement on what to do with it, they go to Wally for some advice.
And if we just give it back, we won't get anything.
Oh, really? I think maybe you guys should hear a particularly relevant letter I've been working on.
How did I know you were going to say that?
It is our 27th show.
He proceeds to tell them about a group of young boys in Michigan who call themselves the Good Guys. I'd make a sarcastic remark about how humble that name is, but I'm just glad they didn't go with the Good Boys. It'd be a very different show. While playing baseball, these kids come across a purse that contains a pair of wedding rings and a bundle of cash.
$45. $45?
Why does that crack me up so much? It's the dramatic zoom in, along with the delivery, that gives the illusion that his face is about to pop off his head.
$45?
And the acting from the other boys is no better.
Whoa, those gotta be worth millions. We should turn them in. We should keep them. We'll be rich.
I mean, he had 2 small scenes to film with these kids. You couldn't have given them a little direction? So the Sandlot here take a vote on what to do with the purse, and they decide to turn it in to the police station. It pays off because when the rightful owner got it back, she was so happy with the boys that she got them a pizza party.
Great, huh, guys? I'll say. What do you say?
Hey, this is a Christian show. Burping isn't funny.
Honesty is the best policy because it makes you feel better outside and inside.
It turns out the $10 bill the kids found belonged to Jodi, so Leroy gives it back to her, and what he does next, I don't know.
Hey, where'd you find that? Oh, thanks, Leroy.
Hey, Wally, now I know what you mean feeling good on the inside and outside.
Okay then.
There's your answer. Respect and trust are things we have to earn from people throughout.
Leroy?
The only way to do that.
You okay there, buddy?
And always. Yeah.
Believe me, Wally's right. Honesty is the best policy. Oh boy, is it ever.
Should I be concerned about this?
Yeah, I don't think many kids in the audience are going to find honesty very appealing if it makes you act like you're a member of the Addams family enjoying the feeling of poison ivy. Legend has it, to this very day, Leroy is still rubbing his face. So as a 27-year-old who enjoys poking fun at something so innocent, where does my soft spot for this show come from, you might ask? There's a small handful of things. For one, the songs are actually not bad. A few of them are a bit on the limp side, like one that's just listing off all the things besides swearing that you can do with the mouth God's given you.
You can hold your breath. You can sneeze. Just think of all the wonderful things your mouth can do.
I think we got a good enough list from Larry, thank you. But a number of them, like Just a Prayer Away, as well as I Can Dance and God Sees Inside Me, are pretty good, especially by children's show standards.
God sees inside me, in my heart, in my personality. He sees inside me, all the promise and possibility.
And even when the songs are a bit generic, the words still hit when they're in the sound of the glowing yellow ball in Jodi's throat.
He is never far away. God is always there for you.
The best song in the show is in the segment called Running the Good Race, where they read a letter from a girl who has a problem with a friend of hers, because she claims Christianity but doesn't treat others Christ-like at all, mocking those who believe differently than her. In an allegorical turn for the show, Jodi tells the kids about the early career of racing legend Mario Andretti, how nearing the end of a very tight race, Mario and fellow racer AJ Foyt were battling for the lead, and determined to be the victor, Mario tried to run AJ off the track. As the race ended, he was ashamed of what he had done and realized that he needed to be a much more responsible competitor. So he apologized to AJ, and they've been BFFs ever since. Following this experience, Mario's life advice to everyone is to not hate your opponents, but respect them. And in the current climate of politics and differing beliefs and worldviews, that's a message I can get behind more than ever. And after that story, we get this total banger of a song.
You've got to run this race. Keep the faith in everything you do.
This was the family jam back in the day, but it's only now that I get what the song is saying.
You've got to run this race. Set the pace for those who follow you.
It's the essence of Hebrews 12:1 that we lay aside the sin that hinders us and run the race marked out for us, setting a good example of who Jesus is to our multitude of witnesses.
Look ahead to the prize. Don't be led to compromise.
It's a catchy beat, a solid message, and just an all-around fun tune. That's of course not to say that anyone over the age of 12 would be caught dead singing along to it.
You've got to run this race. Keep the faith in everything you do. You've got to run this race. Set the pace for those who follow you.
And I think those who follow me just peaced out, yep. Now, when I revisited the show during lockdown, there were 3 other segments that stuck out to me, 2 of which involved the topic of divine intervention. The first is called Snakebite, in which Jodi tells the story of Mark Durrance. In 1988, at 10 years old, Mark was out hiking in the woods with his dog when he was suddenly bitten by a rattlesnake. It was very fast-acting venom. At 150 yards away from his home, his legs quickly became numb, no one could hear him crying out for help, and he started to slip into unconsciousness. And yet, his mom found him lying on the front porch. They rushed him to the hospital, and the doctors applied the antivenom, uncertain if Mark would survive. After over a day of waiting, the swelling decreased, and Mark woke up from his coma. And when he spoke to his parents about what happened, he told them that as he laid helpless on the ground, he was picked up and carried home by a mysterious man dressed in white. This is a story that was also told on an episode of It's a Miracle.
I couldn't really see a whole lot. I felt very paralyzed, like I couldn't move at all. And that's when I felt my body being lifted up off the ground. It was a man in a white robe with a red belt, and there was a light around his head. And when we got to the stairs, I remember him saying that I was going to be all right, that everything would be fine.
It's certainly a fascinating story, even though the production values in Guideposts Junction's reenactments still aren't great. It looks like they used a bathroom for the hospital room. Though it is followed by a lovely song from Jodi and the kids.
There are angels in heaven and angels on earth, sent here to watch over us from above. Telling you down to see angels. Pray the Lord my soul to be angels.
Now, taking into consideration that it was even medically determined that there was no way Mark could have gotten home on his own, I'm going to say that I believe his account, and I do believe it was a guardian angel. I can't say the same about the other story about divine protection. In the segment called Moving Day, we're told the aforementioned story about a boy named John who was moving away with his mother after his father left them. They loaded their belongings into the back of a rental truck, but had nothing to keep it all from being exposed. And as luck would have it, while they were on the road, a huge rainstorm was headed their way. Knowing that all their appliances would be drenched and ruined, John's mom told him to have faith that God would take care of them. So John said a prayer, and as the story has it, when the storm caught up to them, it rained on all sides of them, but the truck and all their appliances never got wet at all. Okay, I don't mean to be a doubting Thomas or anything like that, but this I find very hard to believe. See, despite all the ways that God makes his presence known to us, you still need to believe without seeing. Otherwise, living a life in Jesus isn't much of a challenge if there's no element of faith to it. The idea of being carried to safety by an unidentified figure while you're half-conscious, that's an apparent enough miracle at the hands of God while still allowing you to live a life of faith. But for the rain to fall everywhere except on you, that's the kind of thing that is so unmistakably due to higher power that you're pretty much at the point of believing because you've seen. I know we don't understand all the ways of God, but if that really happened, then I feel like he may as well have just shown up on the hood of their truck and been like, "Hey, I'm God. Ain't I awesome?" I think that Christians can sometimes feel an urge to embellish times when they felt God's protection, and in my opinion, this story is a product of that. I don't know, maybe there's something I'm missing. Whether or not either of these stories are true, I suppose Jodi puts it best when she's telling the snakebite story.
Wow, was it God? Was it an angel?
Yes. Well, I guess that's for each of us to decide on our own.
Now, the last segment of Guideposts Junction that stood out to me is one that I found a bit of inspiration in. It's called Whitney. There are no goofy sounds or music in the 9 minutes of this section of the tape. It knows to be very serious. While discussing the topic of illness, Jodi tells the kids about a very sick girl.
She doesn't look sick at all.
But she is. You see, Whitney has AIDS.
Why'd she have to get AIDS?
Well, nobody knows the answer to that question.
She tells them about her hard life with the disease, how she was diagnosed at the age of 10, and when her friends found out, they didn't even want to be around her, unaware that AIDS isn't contagious by proximity. Jodi then sings a moving solo about how Jesus knows the troubling feeling of a short life, himself having lived one all for the sake of dying.
God's part of is beating inside the heart of me. A still small voice repeating, I love you.
This was one of a mere 90-odd cases at the time where someone contracted AIDS for completely unknown reasons. And naturally, it was devastating when Whitney found out. There were times when she got scared and frustrated, and even nights where she wished that she was already dead. But ultimately, she found strength and optimism in her faith in God, so she learned everything that she could about AIDS and started advocating for the awareness of it, speaking about the need to, quote, take every day as it goes by, because if you don't, it's your loss.
Will she ever get better?
Well, that's a big question that no one really has the answer to right now.
To give an update to the story, as I was doing my research, the first thing I learned is that sadly, a year after Guideposts Junction, Whitney did pass away, at just 15 years old. But to the extent of what I learned, she never did lose her spirit, and she never lost faith in God's will for her. And therefore, she didn't lose her battle with AIDS. She won.
She knows that when her time comes, there'll be a bright light guiding her to heaven, and God will be there waiting, with open arms and an open heart.
You know, sometimes even at adult age, I doubt my ability to have the courage to really live and have faith like that if I knew that I was in danger of dying young. So for a preteen to be able to, it's quite something. And I have to say, that's kind of what Guideposts Junction as a whole does for me now as an adult. It's made me realize the beauty of childlike belief. In the life I have now, where my mind can get so wrapped up in things like work and politics, such things that can lure my mind away from God, this show gives me some relieving therapy. It's in the simplicity of young kids having fun singing songs to the Lord, or sitting around listening to real-life stories of faith and perseverance. It's that kind of innocence that makes me reminisce on the days of Sunday school, the time when I believed like a child, back before there was any shred of doubt infesting my mind, when my life was as easy as, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Yes, this belief came from the fact that I was a simple-minded kid who'd believe just about anything, but when my life gets tough, I wish that I could experience that complete and total absence of doubt again, knowing that He's got the whole world in His hands. That truly is what made the days of my youth the greatest time of my life. Just takes a growing up to realize just how great it was.
Children are the most awesome of God's creatures.
You got that right, you adequately more mobile Chuck E. Cheese robot. You got that right. So yeah, I know that this show is strictly intended for young kids, but I still like it. I won't begin to deny that it is silly and often corny, no doubt about that. But as much fun as I have riffing on it, I just find the innocence to it appealing. Plus, there's some really good songs, Jodi Benson's a lot of fun, and it can get into some heavy topics. Even now, it did give me a few things to think about, which is more than I can say about other children's shows with characters that look like this. So for the target audience in the age bracket of 4 to 10 or so, Guideposts Junction is a good show to point them in the right direction.
Let us hear from you at Guideposts Junction.
Well, that's a wrap. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Before I go, I want to direct you to a fundraiser I'm doing for my birthday month. I was compelled to do it for a faith-based organization that helps people who are suffering from AIDS. So my fundraiser is for World Vision. If you're unfamiliar with them, they're a global humanitarian organization. The USA wing is based right here in Washington, very close to where I live actually. Since their founding in 1950, they have helped over 30 million people worldwide, primarily children, giving them health care, clean water, disaster relief, and all sorts of humanitarian resources. World Vision has programs for bringing care and counseling to those affected by the HIV virus and helping prevent further infections. So this fundraiser is for their Child Health and Nutrition Fund. At the time when dealing with the AIDS crisis was a controversial topic among the church, World Vision immediately spurred action and challenged the church to get involved. I'm sure most fellow believers know this, but there should be nothing controversial about sending compassion to those with fatal illness, regardless of what may have been the cause, or about letting those affected know that they are not forsaken, that God still loves them no matter what their circumstances. Even if you're not a Christian, this is still a great cause, so if you feel it in your heart to donate, go to the link in the pinned comment and give what you feel's right. As for me, not to toot my own horn here, but I was thinking maybe I'd give around something like
$45?
Yeah, seems reasonable. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and share and subscribe for more. This is Pop Culture. I'm Alex Pop.